Hi everyone, welcome back to Dobby Books. I'm recording from my car because I took a little trip to Santa Barbara. They were having a big book sale. And on my way back, I needed to charge my battery. So here I am sitting here, nice and comfortable and resting in the car, and I decided that I should show you the books that I got. So here we go. So first of all, this book sale is something that's been going on for the last few days. I'm trying to think of the name of the location. If it hits me, I'll tell you. And it was just this big warehouse of books, and it's all for charity, and I love that. And I hung out for hours on end and forgot to eat. Wonderful stuff. So let me show you what I got. This one, The Age of Revolution by Eric Hobsbawm. There's 4 books in this series. There's the Age of Revolution, the Age of Capital, the Age of Empire, and the Age of Extremes. This is book number 2, I think. I think this is book number 2. And this, let's see, blah, 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 blah. The Transformation of Peasants into Industrial Laborers, the Replacement of Omnipotent Monarchs by a Triumphant Middle Class, The Birth of New Sciences, Technologies, and Ideologies, the shock waves that rippled outward from Europe to America, Asia, and Africa. Written with clarity and aphoristic elegance, The Age of Revolution is a landmark work that is indispensable to any understanding of the world in which we now live. And I have the other book in that series, The Age of Empire. I think this is the last one in this series. And no, this is the third. So of 4 books, this is the third. And let's see what it talks about. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, just this is covering 20th century. So I have these 2, so now I only have to find the other 2. I have seen these at my regular library sale, so let's see if I find the other 2 volumes on this. Then I also found this book here, The Rise of the Working Class. This is an older publication. This is 1967. And in this book, now this is a McGraw-Hill publication. It mentions one of the main social changes brought about by the Industrial Revolution was the emergence of a new class of worker. For the first time in history, there was a group of free men, as opposed to slaves, who worked with their hands but did not own the means of production. Unlike the journeymen and craftsmen of pre-industrial days, the new workers who flocked to the towns possessed no tools of their own, but competed with one another with their labor for jobs that the machine created. So, of course, more history. I just seem to be drawn into history. Next book, Provocations of Virtue, Rhetoric, Ethics, and the Teaching of Writing. This is one of my doldrum things that I know no one else is interested in. And this is interesting. What struck me is the author. This is Utah State University Press. Let me tell you when it was published. This was copyright, I will find it, 2019. The back says, in Provocations of Virtue, John Duffy explores the indispensable role of writing teachers and scholars in counteracting the polarized, venomous, post-truth character of contemporary public argument. Teachers of writing are uniquely positioned to address the crisis of public discourse because their work in the writing classroom is tied to the teaching of ethical language practices that are known to moral philosophers as the virtues: truthfulness, accountability, open-mindedness, generosity, and intellectual courage. Drawing upon Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics and the branch of philosophical inquiry known as virtue ethics, Provocations of Virtue calls for the reclamation of rhetorical virtues as a core function in the writing classroom. Duffy considers what these virtues actually are, how they might be taught, and whether they can prepare students to begin repairing the broken state of public argument. In the discourse of the virtues, teachers and scholars of writing are offered a common language and a shared narrative. a story that speaks to the inherent purpose of the writing class and to what is at stake in teaching writing in the 21st century. This book is a timely and historically significant contribution to the field. And those were words that stood out to me. The virtue ethics, which I'm familiar with, talking about the public argument, reclaiming rhetorical virtues. And these all caught on to me. Ethical language practices. I'm very curious. I want to see what this author has to say. So this again is Provocations of Virtue, Rhetoric, Ethics, and Teaching of Writing by John Duffy. The next one I got. Now, I heard about this book a long while ago, and I never thought I would get it anywhere but online, ordering it from Bookshop or something. But I found it at this big book sale. It is entitled The Trivium, The Liberal Arts of Logic, Grammar, and Rhetoric, Understanding the Nature and Function of Language by Sister Miriam Joseph, Ph.D. It's pretty dense when it comes to grammar and writing, and it's obviously something I'm not going to read from cover to cover, but I'm going to turn to those sections which interest me. The back of the book has a brief little snippet. The Trivium guides the reader through a clarifying and rigorous account of logic, grammar, and rhetoric, which you'll often, those are keywords and terms you'll hear in classical education. A thorough presentation of general grammar, propositions, syllogisms, enthymemes, fallacies, poetics, figurative language, and metrical discourse, accompanied by lucid graphics and enlivened by examples from Shakespeare, Milton, Plato, and others. Makes the Trivium a perfect book for teachers, students, writers, lawyers, and all serious users of language. And there's a quote from the author: because communication involves the simultaneous exercise of logic, grammar, and rhetoric, these three arts are the fundamental arts of education, of teaching, and of being taught. The same principles of logic, grammar, and rhetoric guide writer, reader, speaker, and listener. Interesting. So, I am definitely going to be diving into this one. The Trivium by Sister Miriam Joseph, Ph.D. Next one. Now the next ones are books that I'm adding to my children's section. And all three of these are from a series of books. This one here, watch. I'll go home and find out that this is like the 5th copy of this particular one. Midnight for Charlie Bone is the first in the Charlie Bone series. The last time I spoke with you, I got a paperback edition of this. I believe it was this one, and I wanted to find a hardback copy. So this is the hardback copy. And when I get home, I'll find out if I'm right or wrong. So now with the Charlie Bone series, I only need how many? I keep my little list here in my little book that I bring with me when I go to my book sales. As I'm adding Charlie Bone, I have 1, 2, 3. I only need 4 more in the Charlie Bone series. And there's a total of 8. So I'm halfway through. I found another Artemis Fowl book. This one is The Arctic Incident. I don't think I have this one. I checked my list. And of course I want the hard copy, so I got that one. And that was the only one with Artemis Fowl. So now in the Artemis Fowl series, I only need 2 more, The Atlantis Complex and The Last Guardian. And this next series is from the Pendragon series. They were hardbound. It has not been easy to find these. This one is book 7, The Quillen Games. I love that cover. This is the series my youngest son was reading when he was in middle school, as well as the Charlie Bone series. And the next one I found was Pendragon's book 2, The Lost City of Far, or Far, I guess you would pronounce it. So I got 2 more, and oh no, I have 1 more Pendragon. And I got book number 6, The Rivers of Zeta. So now in my Pendragon series, I only need 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 10 in this series, so that's good news. I've got 6 out of the 10, so I'm getting somewhere. And then, if that wasn't enough, I decided I wanted to go to Chaucer Books again in Santa Barbara and see what they had there. Interesting. It wasn't as exciting the second time around. I don't know why. I have no idea. I wasn't as fascinated, although it's an excellent bookstore. It still is. That wonder of that first time, of that first trip, wasn't quite there this time. But I had more time to look because I didn't have a husband waiting in a car for me. It was just me, so it was a whole lot of fun. And I ended up getting this book, A Queer History of the United States. And on the back, this is published by Beacon Press. The copyright on this one is 2011. The author is Michael Bronsky. And on the back it reads, A Queer History of the United States is more than a who's who of queer history. It is a work that radically challenges how we understand American history. Drawing upon primary source documents, literature, and cultural histories, scholar and activist Michael Bronsky charts the breadth of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender history from 1492 to the 1990s. And there was a very interesting section in the introduction, and that's what convinced me to get it. Hold on. Okay, it was this. Said a decade ago, when I first began teaching lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender studies at Dartmouth College, I was invited to a fraternity house to moderate a group discussion titled Don't Yell Fag from the Porch. The frat was renowned for its rowdiness, and indeed someone had recently yelled that word at a student passing by. Undoubtedly, not for the first time. After being publicly challenged on this behavior, the frat brothers decided to host a public forum on homophobia in the Greek system. The discussion went well and became an annual event. That word was yelled with less frequency, and in a few years the fraternity even had a few out gay members. But that evening, and over the years, what bothered me was that the entire discussion was predicated on the idea that Dartmouth College was essentially a straight place that had to be open to gay people. But that makes no sense. We all know that life and history is far more complex than that. Or do we? And then he goes on to basically discuss that this mentality, of us welcoming them rather than the mindset of, well, they have always been us. They've always been part of us. So that encouraged me to get this. I definitely want to read more. If I could, here's the snippet on the author. Michael Bronsky is a professor of practice in media and activism in the Women, Gender, and Sexuality program at Harvard University. He has written extensively on LGBT issues for 5 decades in both mainstream and queer publications, and is the author of 5 other books and editor of numerous anthologies. From Beacon Press. Okay, and there we go. A Queer History of the United States by Michael Bronsky. And now I want to briefly tell you of a book I'm currently reading that I'm very excited about. I really, really am very excited about this. It just came out. It's called Becoming Madam Secretary. The author's last name is Dre, D-R-A. I apologize, don't remember her first name. Stephanie Dre, probably. And it talks about Miss Perkins. And again, I don't remember her first name. That's my bad. But she became the first woman cabinet member in FDR's presidency. And not her stipulations, but she agreed to take on the job if FDR would seriously consider and allow her to pursue certain criteria that she wanted to bring to the country to try to alleviate the suffering of a lot of people, not just those going through the Depression, but the ones who suffered the most when anything happens in the economy. And it was the poor, obviously. There were single women at the time who didn't have the freedoms that we have now. There were children who were hungry, and you had charities that existed at the time that would help you out based on whether they thought you were living a moral life or not. And she thought that was something completely beside the point, But she was a woman who worked among these marginalized populations, so she knew firsthand what they went through. So her experience was brought into FDR's cabinet when she became Madam Secretary. And I just started it. It's a wonderful story. You see how she rubs elbows with very well-known people. Besides Mrs. Roosevelt, there were big names at the time, wealthy at the time, women mainly, heiresses, etc., who would work for women's suffrage and for helping the poor and, you know, making changes in society that they felt would help a lot. And of course, who was going to listen to women or take them very seriously at that time? So she had a lot of courage, and she it's amazing. The new names, and there was an author who fell in love with the redhead, and I can't think of his name. I want to say Upton Sinclair. His name was Sinclair. Oh my God, Sinclair Lewis. She talks about the friendship she had with him. It is just a fascinating book so far, and I would strongly encourage you all to read it. It truly is just a wonderful and fascinating story, and a lot of the issues that we're dealing with now seem to be coming up all over again during this time in our history, and I think we need to be reminded of how hard we had to work to get what we got, and we don't want to lose any of that. So that is it, and I thank everybody for hanging out with me in my nice little car. So everyone, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.